Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm joined by the Wave Navigator kayak. This is a high pressure drop stitch kayak from Wave and they sent it me to give it a review. It's pretty impressive to look at. It's very, very stylish, but is it any good at being a kayak? That's what I'm here today to find out. This kayak is the 1:2 person model. You can get 2 to 3 or 1:2, and this is suitable allegedly for 1 person or 2 people. I've only been out with 2 people so far and it's been pretty okay. I'm going to go out on my own as well and see what it's like, and we'll make a bit of a comparison. Out of the box you get 2 paddles, obviously, 2 of these material seats which you can tighten and use as you want, and you also get, which I find quite impressive, are these footrests here. The footrests are really handy. When you want to put down a bit of power in a kayak, as anyone knows, you need your feet and you need your entire body to connect with the craft, but normally struggle with inflatables at doing that. So having those footrests, if used properly, should make that difference. Obviously, since it's inflatable, it does blow up in a few different sections. You basically blow up both sidewalls independently, and then you've got the base that you blow up as well. The base is very similar to a paddleboard, and Wave make a lot of paddleboards, so it's a very similar setup to that. It does make it slightly uncomfortable when you're out on the water. However, that high pressure does mean you've got a solid craft, and I suspect the comfort could be adjusted as you want. It sits at 15 psi, this craft, so it's not the highest pressure. I suspect something with a higher pressure might have a better rigidity, but I do think the overall frame of it kind of compensates for that anyway. Even when you've got 2 people in, there's a fair amount of storage in this kayak, and that comes down to the bungee cords, which you've got at the back, and you've also got a set at the front too. A lot of people are going to opt to store their kit underneath these back hangers, where you should be able to get a fair few dry bags. I reckon you could probably store about 40 or 50 litres of kit there, probably another 20 or 30 here, and then when you come down towards the front, you probably get another couple of dry bags underneath the front compartment if you wanted to compromise your leg space a little, and again you've got more of those bungee cords again, so you really could carry the kit for an expedition in this craft. Up until this point, a lot of this has been pretty standard for most kayaks. However, when I got this out of the box yesterday, one of the things I noticed, which I found desperately impressive and made me think perhaps these things could compete with their solid counterparts, was a solid bow. And there's also a solid stern as well. Now what that means is when you're hitting obstacles in the water, maybe you're coming up against a set of rocks, it means this craft is going to hold out against those things. It's a solid bow which extends all the way back into the kayak at around about ½ a foot, and you've got the same on the stern at the back as well. Now I think that does put this kayak in a slightly higher class, and as I said, does make it a little bit more competitive against its solid counterparts as well. There's obviously many other boring things on the kayak, like, you know, carry handles and all that sort of stuff. Allegedly this can hold 220 kilos, so presumably those carry handles are rated for quite high amounts of weight. If we give it a big flip over, what we do have is 2 fins. We've got one pretty much right at the back of the craft itself, and as we make our way down towards the middle, we've got another one as well. Now, I suspect the reason for doing this is because when you're mooring up most of the time, coming into a beach, coming into a bay or something like that, obviously you're going to hit the shallow water first on the front of the craft. So I think it means you can have these slightly bigger fins, it'll track straighter and truer in the water. However, when you do want to moor it, you can still get into most shallow water pretty easily, at least to the point where you could probably wade out and pull the kayak the rest of the way in anyway. So I think that's a really good feature, and they're very similar standard locking fins like they have on their paddle boards. At the moment, we've got it set up in 2-person mode, and there is quite a bit of room. I've got a decent amount of leg room. I'm 6 foot and quite easily stretch my legs all the way out. Plenty of leg room in the front.
Yes.
There you go, plenty of leg room in the front as well, and we've still got that storage back and front too. So overall, the 14 foot, pretty spacey kayak. My only annoyance with this kayak when you're actually out on the water is these paddle holders on the side. Obviously I've got one here, there's one at the front, and there's one just over to this side too. So in theory you can hold all of your paddles. The problem is they kind of get in the way as you're trying to paddle. The amount of times I've knocked my knuckles or knocked my hands on those holders is ridiculous. And if I was doing a longer journey, it would be a big consideration, to be honest. The problem is at this position as well, as much as I've got it on quite a long leg position, I'm actually quite far away from them too. So if I was any closer, I'd probably hit them more often. While it's out in the water, that probably is one of my biggest criticisms by far, is those paddle holders. They just seem to be in the way. What we'll do now is we'll head back in to the dock. We'll swap this over to one person and we'll see how it performs when I've only got one person in it, mainly me. I've not done this yet, I've only had it as a two-person kayak, so it's going to be really interesting to see how it handles out on the water. Swapping into one-person mode should be relatively easy in theory. Obviously, first things first, we'll get rid of one of the paddles. Just leaving one for me, which we'll put in the not very useful but conveniently placed for this paddle holder. Now I'm going to go and use the back set of seats, so I'm going to take out this front one. It is as easy as a couple of clips, and then a couple more clips later, and we've removed that footrest as well. So it really does come in and out pretty easy. Now I've not done the position for one person yet, so I'm going to be intrigued to see how this looks. There we go, so I'll remove the seat, and position wise I'm probably going to go with round about here. It seems to be the most appropriately placed clips for what I'm doing, and should place me near enough central in the kayak. That looks pretty central. We'll chuck the footrest in and then we're ready to go. Be technical here. I'm now holding the camera with my feet, probably producing some of the shitest footage you've ever seen. However, the kayak hasn't got any camera mounts on it, so I've tried to retrofit my own, but it's actually really tricky on this. In one person mode, it is actually really good, this kayak. It cuts really well into the wind, and if I could use that footrest, I know it would be giving me that connection I want to the kayak. You've probably just seen there actually, I have just knocked those paddle holders that I'm on about. You can see how you can clip. If you're coming in, knocking the top of them and knocking your knuckles as well, which is a little bit annoying. I think it's probably just a positioning thing, and I think the more you use this kayak and the more you position yourself, it probably wouldn't be too much of an issue. But I would wonder as to how much use those paddle holders really are, you know, for most people. I mean, when we're out in a normal canoe, we just stick the paddles underneath the seats or underneath the fronts, and even on our cheaper inflatables, that's kind of what we do as well. You will obviously always notice with an inflatable it's going to get caught a little bit more by the wind than most other solid craft are going to. However, that's kind of the trade-off you've got. The thing is with this kayak is obviously you've got it, it's portable, it's lightweight, you can put it in the back of your car. Therefore, is it worth it? I think so. It actually feels more stable with one person in it as well. When it's got two, it's almost like that bit of extra weight just makes it more of an unstable craft to be in. One person, I'm pretty happy that it is nice and stable out here. However, I am obviously going to see how easy it is to capsize this thing and find out at what point it will flip over, because that's going to determine whether I take it out on a river, I take it out on the sea, or take it out on any water which has got more movement than the lake I'm on right now. Go, the capsize test. This lake is 5 degrees Celsius at the moment. I don't want to go in the water, so you never know. Maybe the Wave Navigator will be so uncapsizable that I won't end up in the water and I'll stay nice and warm. I suspect that isn't the case though. We're gonna go find out, and I'll stop stalling. It's quite a valid test in a way. If you want to take this thing on really moving water, out on the sea, maybe out on a set of rapids, finding out how easily it's going to capsize could be really, really important. Right, let's do it. Let's give this thing a big shake and see if we can get it to go. Oh.
a little bit easier than I expected it to be honest. However, it did hold its own still, so it's got a pass there from me. The one thing which I was impressed with is actually when it did flip, because it's lightweight, you can flip it back over, you can jump back in it if you've got the right techniques. Now I'm a paddle sport leader and instructor, so I know how to do that a little bit easier, but that is definitely easier to get back into when flooded than a canoe or a kayak. So kind of marks up and down there to finish off the test, to be honest.
How are we to conclude the Wave Navigator? Well, firstly, what a craft. This high pressure kayak is very, very impressive and worth every penny as well. I think it starts at around about £430 and comes up towards 500 for the 2 to 3 person. But if you had a family and wanted to head out in something that was a bit more sturdy, a bit more stable and more capable on the water, but you could throw in the back of your car, I wouldn't hesitate recommending the Wave Navigator. Is it going to take on the high seas and grade 3 or 4 rapids? Probably not, and I wouldn't suggest doing that with it. But if you'd like to go out, have a lovely paddle on a lovely day and just enjoy yourself on the water, then I couldn't think of a craft really much better suited than the Navigator. I have actually got 10% off these kayaks at the moment at all Wave products. If you input the code SecondLife10 on Wave's website, you'll actually get 10% off and support the channel as well, which is pretty mega, to be fair. Anyway, for the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, do many, many things. And maybe one day we will have many, many views. Maybe 15 or 20. I will see you in the next video.